entitled people. Woman feels inconvenienced by a 16-year-old who is on the brink of death after a car accident. I just read this news article. It's in German, so I'll give you a rundown. A 16-year-old motorcycle driver was hit by a truck. The paramedics had to treat him on the spot so that he'd have a chance of survival. This didn't sit right with a 50-year-old driver who claimed that she had an important appointment and the resulting traffic jam was getting in the way of that. The police told her to calm down and get back to her car. Well, she didn't like that and started to harass them non-stop. Screaming, cursing, getting out of her car to nag at them because she was running late. After all, it was just a single motorcycle driver. How long can this take? Sadly, the boy died days later in the hospital. And the bitch is facing charges for blocking the corridor for emergency vehicles and resisting enforcement officers. I hope the poor guy at least gets entertainment out of haunting her for the rest of her miserable existence. Entitled Neighbour took my mother for court to get primary custody of my mother's dog. When my mother and her dog moved next door to entitled Neighbour, they fell in love with my mother's dog, Max. For in about 2 years would come get Max for visits. Would watch Max if my mother went out of town, or just so they could play with him. Moved across town and would still call to ask for Max visits. My mother started letting the dog go less and less, but would say yes now and again because for N's pleading. Just before one of the arranged visits, Max got into a fight with another dog. Max seemed to be okay. When N came, my mother said she was worried about letting him go because of the dog fight. N promises that she would look after Max and make sure he was okay. The next day N called my mother and told her that she took Max to the vet because he had a wound on his neck. And also told my mother that she was keeping Max because my mother neglected the dog. My mother was devastated. My mother called the police. They couldn't help because she had agreed to allow the dog to go with N. My mother had to file a civil complaint. It took 2 months to go to court. N told the judge that she and my mother had always shared custody of the dog and that N was the most fit dog parent, so N should have the dog. The judge explained that Max was my mother's possession and that N was to return him immediately. He also said N was responsible for the vet bill and no, my mother did not have to give N visitation. Karen outs herself as office food thief. I work IT at a small non-profit. We have a kitchen/staff room and supply free coffee, tea, milk, sugar etc. During the pandemic all staff were working from home, but, for the past few weeks, some staff have been coming back gradually, most for just 1 to 2 days a week. Including myself and, unfortunately, Karen. Now Karen and I have had many run-ins over the years and suffice to say we don't get along. I don't tolerate her BS. A week or so after being back, Karen sends a condescending email to the office manager, xing all staff. In she says that, while she accepts that the office kitchen had not been stocked while everyone was on lockdown, she is appalled that there is no bread, bagels, yogurts etc. for staff that have returned. Replies, adding xing all staff. Karen. As a courtesy to staff, we provide free coffee, tea, milk and sugar, all of which have been stocked. We have never proved free bread, bagels, yogurts or other food. However, staff do keep personal food items in the refrigerator. Karen threatens to get me arrested for gardening my garden. Title says it all. Because the groundhog had no shadow, spring came early. So I had decided to weed the garden strip that borders mine and Karen's property. There's a fence between the garden and her house. While doing so, I get rid of some of my daylilies that are on my property. I finish, return to my house and continue my day. Until I hear a shriek from the side of my house. I rush over. Because I'm scared someone got hurt. And Karen, who just got home from work, asks me why I got rid of her lilies. I say that they were my lilies, and that I was making space for tomatoes, cucumbers and carrots. She then calls the police because I had destroyed her property. The police come and basically tell her to go inside and shut up. Because it's pretty clear whose flowers they were. The time I supposedly invited a complete stranger to dinner. One day I was grocery shopping and I had gotten to the checkout. I loaded all my groceries onto the belt and was watching the cashier do her thing when the wild Karen made herself known. Apparently she did not approve of the bottle of cooking sherry that I had planned to add to my pot roast. Karen, you shouldn't use that stuff. You should go get real sherry. That stuff just tastes terrible. Me? Okay. Karen starts in criticizing the other groceries she doesn't approve of, going on and on about how this is nasty and that is awful. I'd finally had enough. Me, I'm sorry. I forget sometimes. But when were we introduced? I only ask because I honestly cannot remember inviting you to dinner. The cashier got this huge grin. Karen moved to a different checkout. Ek rips turban off of Sikh friend, gets expelled. So, if you didn't know, in the Sikh religion, men wear turbans. Because they grow their hair throughout their entire life. And hair is considered sacred. Turbans are used to protect their hair and it holds a symbolic value. Well, my friend, who we'll call H, is just a normal kid. He doesn't have an Indian accent or anything. He grew up here in Canada, so he had the English-American accent. During middle school he liked Yu-Gi-Oh! And he's an amazing artist. This, though, occurred during elementary, grade 5. So, there is this kid who we'll call Jason. Jason is an absolute issue. He would complain when we played Manhunt. If he were tagged he would say, "OWWW. My leg hurts. I can't be the tagger." Well, during lunch, he decided it would be funny to pull at my friend H's turban. When he pulled, everything went loose. Instead of people laughing with him, we were all in shock. My friend was in tears. So a teacher hurriedly brought him into the school to help put it back together. However, Jason was in super big trouble. He was sent to the principal's office and had, either, an in-school suspension or was expelled. Either way, H got proper justice. Entitled Vegan tries to prevent me from speaking my mother tongue. So, this happened 2 or 3 days ago. I had gone to the grocery store, since I was running out of sausages, eggs and milk. Over there, I ran into my friend. I greeted him by saying, "Namaste, we're Indian." Enter Entitled Vegan, stage left. "Are you guys vegan?" Perplexed, we both shook our heads. "Then you can't say namaste. That's a vegan term." My friend and I looked at each other and burst out laughing. Not only was she trying to tell Indians to stop speaking their own language, she was pronouncing it completely wrong. Between gasps of breath, my friend managed to say, "It's pronounced namaste." At that, the entitled stranger turned bright red. "How would you know?" she demanded. I interjected. "We're quite literally Indian. Namaste is a word from Hindi. You're the one who is wrong." Of course, logic did not work on her. As she opened her mouth to retort, my friend picked up my chicken sausages and shook them at her. She leapt back and then thankfully walked away in disgust. Short story, but somewhat satisfying to chase her off at the end.